Welcome to Decades of Darkness. On the morning of November 23, 1901, in the small town of Coatesville, Indiana, a lumber shed became the grim setting for a mystery that would consume Hendricks County. The unconscious body of a contractor named Wilson Haynes was found. He had been brutally struck across the head, and he never regained consciousness, dying later that afternoon. Haynes, a contractor from a prominent local family, had simply been in town to buy supplies. The initial coroner's jury refused to return a verdict, a clear signal that something was deeply wrong. Many in Coatesville immediately suspected murder. Within a month, the grand jury had completed its investigation, and 4 men were indicted. Charles Hampton, a clerk at O'Brien's drug store, his brother, Obe Hampton, a section hand named Fred Cassady, and Frank Stewart. The state believed they had their killers. The first to face the music was Charles Hampton, known as Jack. His trial would be the biggest legal battle the county had seen since the infamous Hinshaw case. The state's theory of the crime was meticulous and chilling. They claimed the murder weapon was something like a slingshot or mace. The fatal blow, they argued, wasn't struck in the lumber shed, but in the back room of O'Brien's drug store, where Charles Hampton was a clerk and where liquor was illegally sold. The prosecution presented circumstantial evidence that was both dramatic and compelling. Dr. Hope, the attending physician, testified that the serious skull fractures were unlikely to have come from a simple fall. He believed the wounds, and the dirt on Haynes's body, indicated he had been hit and then left to lie face down, likely in that back room, before being moved. The star witness was Charles Rice, a woodchopper. He claimed he went back to the closed drugstore that night for a drink. He saw Charles Hampton open the back door and let Haynes in. Then, he heard a sickening sound. A blow struck and a noise like a man had fallen against a wooden partition. Rice was also scared of the Hamptons and had only been compelled to tell his story after the indictment. Another neighbor, Samuel Oliver, testified to hearing cries near the drugstore later that night. "Fred," and "help," followed by a demand to make him hush. The sounds then moved in the direction of the lumber shed. Evidence suggested Charles Hampton had attempted to create a false alibi, initially telling the grand jury he hadn't seen Haynes after 7:30 p.m., then changing his story when confronted. He even asked a friend not to give him away about being in the store. Hampton's defense was a flat denial. He claimed Haynes was simply drunk, fell off a run board in the lumber shed, fractured his skull, and was then exposed to the cold, an accident, not murder. Hampton took the stand, but the state hammered at his conflicting statements, particularly his false testimony before the grand jury. The prosecution argued that his attempts to conceal his illegal liquor sales and his whereabouts were not to cover a minor crime, but a greater one. The tension was palpable. The appearance of a key missing witness, Jeff Herod, late in the trial, a man the defense had implied was the real killer, created a dramatic scene that many believe sealed the defendant's fate. On February 19, 1902, after just 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Charles Hampton guilty of murder in the second degree. He was sentenced to life in prison. The verdict sent a shockwave of fear through his co-defendants, Obe Hampton, Fred Cassady, and Frank Stewart, who were still awaiting trial. With Charles Hampton convicted, the state was confident in its case against the remaining 3, arguing they were accessories who either witnessed the blow or helped carry the body. The trial of Fred Cassady and Frank Stewart began in April. This time, the defense, facing the life sentence precedent, took a calculated risk. They offered no defense at all after the state rested. The jury deliberated for 42 agonizing hours, but ultimately failed to agree, hanging at 7 votes for conviction and 5 for acquittal. The legal strategy needed a change. With Cassady and Stewart claiming pauper status and Obe Hampton seeking a change of venue, the cases were all moved from Hendricks County to the Marion County Criminal Court in Indianapolis. The state chose to try Frank Stewart first, and his trial revealed the incredible legal problems baked into the original indictment. To everyone's surprise, the convicted killer, Charles Hampton, was brought back from Michigan City Prison to testify for the defense. He swore under oath that Stewart had nothing to do with the crime, contradicting the state's entire theory. The jury was baffled. They grappled with complex legal questions for 24 hours. If Stewart helped move the body after Haynes was fatally wounded, was he guilty of murder or just being an accessory after the fact? If he moved the body before death, would that make him guilty of assault and battery with intent to kill, a crime not included in the original murder indictment? The jury, described as a group of 12 sick men from poor ventilation and legal confusion, simply could not reconcile the facts with the indictment. On June 14, 1902, Frank Stewart was acquitted. The indictment for murder could not hold up against the nuanced reality of being an accomplice who may have only assisted after the lethal blow. This verdict was the final nail in the coffin for the state's remaining cases. 2 weeks later, on July 5, 1902, the cases against Obe Hampton and Fred Cassady were officially dismissed on the state's motion. They simply believed they could not secure a conviction under the existing indictments. The mysterious murder of Wilson Haynes ended in a bizarre split decision. Charles Hampton was left to serve a life sentence, his own lies and the testimony of one witness sealing his fate for striking the blow. He insisted on his innocence until the end, immediately appealing his case to the Supreme Court. But the three men accused of being his accomplices, Obe Hampton, Fred Cassady, and Frank Stewart, walked free. The state had a strong case that a murder had occurred, and that three men helped conceal the crime. Yet, a poorly defined, overly broad indictment for murder could not withstand the legal scrutiny needed to convict accomplices. The story of the Wilson Haynes murder is a stark reminder of two things: that the law is often a complicated maze, and that a single, devastating blow can lead to a web of chaos where one man pays the ultimate price, and three others escape justice on a legal technicality. If you like this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Decades of Darkness.